Well, well, well. Trump has come up with a new, brilliant plan to wreck the economy. He is going after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. He's done everything he could think of this year, in the last year, to get Powell to lower interest rates to his liking, which would be probably around zero until the election, till the midterms this year. And Powell has not budged. Powell is showing himself to be a very strong man, actually, courageous man, standing up to the dictator. But in his latest move, Trump has decided, well, if he won't submit to badgering, how about a criminal prosecution? Maybe that'll do the trick. So he gets on the line with Persecution Pam and says, let's come up with something on Jerome Powell and charge him with a crime. And the best they can do is say that when he renovated Federal Reserve offices a while back, that he committed some kind of fraud. Just absolutely not true. Not a bit of evidence for that. But I love the statement that Jerome Powell made yesterday. He actually responded to this, and it's so great to see somebody finally respond, and he responded in such a strong and courageous way. I'm going to play the whole thing. It's about a little less than 2 minutes, but this is such a great statement. It's unprecedented. A Federal Reserve chairman has never had to respond to a president in this way. Never. It's just amazing. But in Trump's plan, his cockamamie ideas on the economy, this would just be added on top of tariffs and make the economy go even more down the tube. This guy, Jerome Powell, is actually trying to save him from himself. But he will never get that, right? He knows everything. He knows better than everybody on everything, which is why the economy is going down and his poll numbers are crashing because he's just smarter than everybody else. Anyway, let's take a listen to Jerome Powell's statement from yesterday, and I'll talk about that for a little bit. And we'll talk about why setting interest rates at zero would be so dangerous to the economy, would in fact destroy and wreck the economy. Here's Powell.
Good evening. On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned, in part, a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
I love that. Public service demands standing up and being firm in the face of threats. Why aren't more people doing this? To me, he's a hero. He's an American hero, and he's a patriot, and we should applaud him for this. And we are so blessed to have people like this in our government, and we have lots of people like this in our government. But the Trump regime has done everything in its power to get rid of these kinds of people. Now, why would it be so bad if interest rates were zero? People, I don't think about this all the time, so maybe a refresher would help out a little bit to understand why this is so important. If interest rates were set to zero, which is where we know Trump would set them, because elected officials have strong incentives to push for low interest rates just before elections to juice growth, even if it causes inflation later, because elected politicians are notoriously short sighted. They don't care about anything except tomorrow's election. And we have a big election coming up later this year. That's on his mind. And he's going to do everything in his power to gin up the MAGA base to get them out to vote. So low interest rates or no interest rates would get them out, get them excited, get them juiced up, and maybe help them out a little bit. I don't know. But an independent Fed can say no to these zero interest rates and these short term impulses that elected politicians have. And that's why it's so important that the Fed be independent. And that's why it's such a corruption of our system that will have long lasting detrimental consequences if the president gets away with what he's trying to do right now. And just as a refresher, here's what would happen if interest rates were zero for the long term. Savings would be punished. If rates were always zero, saving money earns nothing. So over time, inflation eats it. And the result is people either take excessive risk or they stop saving, which hurts retirees and pensions. Asset bubbles would explode because free money means investors pour cash into stocks, real estate, crypto, anything that might return a return better than zero. Zombie companies would never die. Weak, unproductive firms would survive because borrowing would be free. The result would be lower productivity for the economy, fewer innovations, and slower long term growth. And inflation risk rises over time. At first, inflation might stay low, but once trust cracks, too much money chasing too few goods, prices start to jump fast, leading us to third world status faster than you can imagine. And history shows that countries where elected politicians control central banks see higher inflation, weaker currencies, and more frequent crises. That's why it's the law, it's in the law that the Fed chairman can't be fired over policy disagreements. So this president says, okay, well, I can't fire him over a policy disagreement, so let's get Persecution Pam on the line and invent a crime and charge him. Let's send him to jail. This president is so corrupt. He's just so corrupt. That is called corruption, folks. That's called using the wheels of justice for political persecution. And that's what they do in dictatorships. You know, it's becoming more and more clear that when MAGA says, let's make America great again, what they really mean by great is let's turn it into a dictatorship. They mean dictatorship. As long as it's their dictator, right? As long as it's their man, they're happy to have a dictator. A corrupt dictatorship, though, violates all our norms. It violates the Constitution, it violates our laws, but MAGA's fine with all that. And in fact, that's obviously what they want. And yet at the same time, they claim they love the Constitution, and they claim they want us to follow it strictly, and they claim they want a country run by laws. But they are perverting what America is and what it stands for. And check this out. The way they're perverting and corrupting our Constitution is the same way they're perverting and corrupting Christianity. The things they say that they're doing in the name of Christ, in the name of God, in the name of biblical teachings, they are corrupting those things and twisting them and turning them all out of shape. You can't even recognize them, just like you can't recognize their idea of American greatness. When they say make America great again, they acknowledge that at some point in our past, it was great. But I'll just point out that at no point was America ever a dictatorship. So, whatever greatness we have attained, it has been when we have followed our laws and our Constitution and our good moral convictions, and that we've honored freedom and democracy. We became great when we were generous, not selfish. We became great when we worked to spread democracy and freedom around the world. And we didn't do those things expecting a monetary payment in exchange. Whatever greatness we may have had, it's come when we have generously contributed time, money, resources, and even the human lives of our men and women in the military to making the world a better and safer place for the most people possible. So when you see our president saying we're going to take your dictator, Maduro, off your hands, but in exchange, you need to hand over $1.5 billion next week. That's not going to make America great. When you see him side with dictators like Vladimir Putin and against our allies and friends like the European Union and Ukraine, you know he's on the wrong side. He's on the opposite side of anything that has ever made America great. And let's don't ever lose sight of that. We can't lose sight of, of that. When we are pounded every day with this slogan, Make America Great, don't ever be fooled by that into thinking it actually means make America great. What they mean by that is we want to make Trump a dictator. We want to let him do whatever he wants, violate any laws he wants. His Supreme Court even gave him the authority to do that. But there's a little good news. Senator Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, came out last night and criticized the administration in a very strong statement on X. He said if there were any remaining doubt whether advisors within the Trump administration are actively pushing to end the independence of the Federal Reserve, there should now be none. He's saying there's no doubt that that's what he's trying to do. And then he said he would oppose confirming any of Trump's Federal Reserve nominees until the legal issue is fully resolved. That's a great statement, right? I love that. So let me see. Yeah, okay. And there's another Republican senator that has come out against this too. Anyway, to these people, make America great means turn it into a corrupt dictatorship. And that's what we now know with certainty after watching this administration in office for the last year. There's really no question about it now. Before the election, a lot of us said he wants to be a dictator. We could see this. So many people saw this. Half the country saw it. That's why they didn't vote for him. And now, all that time before the election and during the election, MAGA people said, "Oh no, that's crazy. You're just me. You just hate Trump. You're deranged. Don't say that." Now the deranged people are the ones who are still supporting him after a year's worth of evidence showing us exactly what track he's on and what he intends to do with this country. All right. That's it for me. I appreciate you watching. If you got anything out of it, I'd appreciate a like or a subscribe. It'd be great to have you on board. And I will talk to you soon. Take care.